the single greatest cost of team members is when we introduce associates. All of a sudden, everything that was so great and so easy with Dr. Smith is now heck on earth, right? And so associates not happy, dentists not happy, here we are.
This is Growth in Dentistry, a dental intelligence podcast, where we ask the question, what does growth in dentistry mean to you? I'm Steve Jensen, a dated dental nerd, and your host.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Growth in Dentistry podcast. I am excited for today. Today, we're going to talk about a huge trend in dentistry that's happening. And I think if you're not paying attention, you probably are missing it. Like you may not have noticed it's happening. I think maybe anecdotally, if you talk with your fellow doctors, if you're an office manager and you're chatting with other office managers, I bet you could put two and two together once we share what this trend is. I bet you're going to be like, yeah, that makes sense that that's happening. But before I introduce what exactly that trend is, I just want to give a huge shout out to the marketing team at Dental Intelligence for sponsoring this podcast week after week. A ton of work goes into creating these episodes. So a huge thanks to them. And as always, they have an offering to the listeners. To take a demo of Dental Intelligence, they will give you a $50 gift card just for checking it out. They've released some really cool new things. So if you've looked at it in the past, didn't sign up, you want to come back and check it out. They've released some really cool new automations around forms and consents. So they're getting way better so that, hey, like when I complete a treatment, I want very specific consent forms to go out beforehand. Those will go out. They'll automatically update into the patient's record. They're also just finishing up work on automated post-op instructions. So if you want to you get that work done that day, you bill it out, and you want those instructions to automatically go out, that's just getting finished up as well. So come check it out. Some cool new things that they've released here in the last year or two. So, okay, with that out of the way, I want to introduce our guests. I have with me today Eric Roman and the Josey Sewell. Welcome, guys.
Thanks,
So
Steve.
glad to be here, Steve.
Amongst friends.
For those that don't know them, they're two of my favorite people in dentistry. They are some of the most human people. I think when you think about a couple of operators that have been able to scale a really successful DSO, I think you might imagine some people who care more about a spreadsheet than they do about people. And that is not these two. They care deeply about people and want to make sure that businesses grow in a way that's really exciting financially. So they're very savvy from a business perspective, but they're also so committed to making sure that dentistry stays a really fulfilling and exciting place to be as a human being. So I'm super excited to bring them on the podcast to talk, just so I frame kind of what you're going to get from them. And let me introduce the problem, and then I'm going to shut my mouth and let these two talk because they're the experts. So here's what I've been seeing. I'm a data nerd. We've got over 10,000 customers. I'm constantly watching the market. We have seen total number of dental practices since COVID, well, really since 2019, has been relatively flat. So from 2019 to 2022, we added 2,000 total dental practices across the country, which I think surprises people. Like we really didn't grow. That's like a 0.4% growth rate in dental practices. And from 2022 to today, we only added a couple more thousand, another 0.4%. And the ADA's projections, along with, we worked with a research firm just recently, their projections for dental practice growth are the same thing, kind of a 0.4% annual growth with dental practices. Now, here's the interesting thing. If you go look at the ADA's research on the supply of dentists, that has continued to increase year over year. And so what does that mean? That means that we are taking these dentists and we're putting more dentists in each location. So it's not like it was in the past. In the past, these dentists would graduate, they'd maybe work as an associate for a couple of years, and then they would go either start or buy a practice where it's just one doc, two hygiene, and then run it back for the rest of their career. And we're not seeing that anymore. What we're seeing is that dentists who've owned a business for a while are starting to realize, wow, I'm compressed financially, and I need to figure out how to grow this business. And instead of adding locations, they're adding providers in the same practice. And what that's doing is there's some really exciting parts of that, but there's also a lot of pains because we have a lot of people that are doing this that don't know what they're doing, that have never done it before. And so I wanted to bring Josey and Eric to talk about this. So my question, and I'm going to shut my mouth, is how can people think about this problem, maybe adding an associate into the business or into a group, and still make it be a killer experience for the business, for the associate, and for the practice and the patients?
Ooh, this is good stuff, Steve. So I want to acknowledge your problem. And like what you just pointed out, like, listen, let's call it what it is. Um, the DSOs introduced the perpetuation of the associate model into dentistry.
Yeah,
They
I call
normalized
that
it.
out. That's true.
I'm just like, listen, love it or hate it, it happened.
Hmm.
And the perpetuation of the associate model did several things, right? There's the first thing that it did is it dangled in front of the owner doctor the possibility of extra freedom, of being able to have a business that produces revenue and profit theoretically, if you do it right, but most don't,
Hmm.
without you there, right? The second thing that it introduced is it increased the potential value of the asset, right? We ain't dumb. Like we're all living lives and trying to retire and doing all this stuff. So it introduced the possibility of excess equity value inside the business when you have associates that are there doing things. And then the third thing, like there was this theory that we can do more good and do more dentistry. But boy, we got some bad things that have come along with it as well, Steve. So yes, we are right now, and I've had data sent to me that says that more than half of the dentists in the United States of America right now are employed associate dentists. So
Okay.
that means the majority of dentists in the US are not owning their own practice and they're working for someone else. So
Mm.
Josie, what are you thinking as we sit in this challenge?
I love that you took the why businesses are doing this. I would actually like to take the perspective of why the doctors are doing it. And what we know is that the doctors don't want to be alone. They actually prefer to work in a group. And so that is something we definitely saw shift when we went from like Gen X to millennial dentists, is they just didn't want to be alone. The other thing is that the dentist watched their predecessors who became a dentist and had their practice and then were strapped to this thing and married to this thing. And it was really difficult. And what many dentists want now is a lifestyle career. What they want is to go and to do dentistry and to feel good about what I'm doing with patients. But also, I don't want to worry about HR. I don't want to worry about marketing. I want to focus on my clinical expertise. And I also want to have a really fulfilling life that gives me the income that I need. Now, the problem that we've seen with that is that their expectations and their reality, I think, are a little bit different. And so what we're finding is that a lot of associate dentists they're not getting the life that they want. They're not getting what was promised to them during the recruiting stage. And so we have a lot of dentists who I think are unfulfilled and untrained. And so they're not giving their best and they're not feeling their best. So it's a multifactorial, I think, problem that we're facing. But we've got some ideas on how we might be able to support the dentist and support the businesses and practices.
So let's frame, if I'm listening to this, we probably have, Eric, that's a cool stat. Like just over half of the dentists are working for another dentist. So that means in this audience, we probably have a group of owners. I bet DI customers, I bet my listeners are probably more on the owner side, but I guarantee we've got a bunch of, business, entrepreneurship curious associates that are listening to this as well,
Yeah,
that they can learn from
hope
what we're going
so.
to talk about. So what are some of the Josie, you started to highlight this. What are some of the kind of the painful issues that exist right now as we've started to get far more associate heavy in dentistry? What are some of like the main problems associates and or owners are facing?
Well, Steve, like how many hours do we have to be able to do this podcast? I've had the blessing of like interviewing literally hundreds of associates, operating them, hiring all the stuff. I was the guy. I built Josie and I built DSOs together and like we know the story and none of the stories are lies. Like I have to confess that like the things that you hear aren't just whiny associates. They're actually true stories. But there's a difference, Steve, between what we hear and the reality of the situation. So, what do we hear? What we hear from associates is I'm not getting what I signed up for. I signed up for mentorship, there is none. This team isn't as good as the doctor told me it would be. The doctor told me there would be more than enough patients for me to get to make the money I want to make. Those patients aren't there. I was told that the systems inside the practice are refined, and I was told this is the associate lie right here, Steve.
Yeah.
All I have to do is show up and do great dentistry. I don't have to know business. I don't have to manage. I don't have to do any of that. And I'm going to make great money and I'm going to be happy and get what I want. And that's a lie. So like that's the story.
So let's talk about that story because I've heard the same thing. I'm out all the time. In fact, I just had a kid that I have known now for 13 years. I used to run youth programs in the summer, and there would be like 400 or 500 kids. Every single week, we'd rotate through these massive groups of kids that had come to these summer camps. So I met him there and was one of his mentors. And now he's grown up. He's gone to college. He just literally just barely graduated from dental school. And no joke, we were having this exact conversation where, just like you said, Josie, he reached out to me and he said, "Look, like, Steve, I don't think I want to be an entrepreneur. Like, I want to have a life. I want to have a lifestyle." And so
Right.
I think it's pretty normal for associates to come out of school, and a lot of them probably do think like, I just want to go work. I want to have a mentor that mentor and maybe, speak to this. They want to have a mentor that like mentors them up clinically. Why? Because they're hoping that if they get better clinically, then they'll produce more and make more money. And so if their earnings don't feel like they're exciting, then I can see how you get to that like mental trap really fast. So will you talk to me through kind of the dissonance then between the owner and the associate? Because it sounds, Eric, like the owner doesn't believe they pitched that to this dentist. The owner probably believes like, no, I pitched like they're going to come in and they're going to be like a partner with me and they're going to like really invest in the business. And I want them to like take extreme ownership of, their role with their hygiene and assistant team and partner with the front office. But the associate certainly maybe didn't hear that. So how do
Well, and I'll let Josie chime in after I like close this piece. Like the thing, yeah. So we talked about what the associate's saying. What is the owner saying?
yeah.
The owner saying is, why aren't you taking ownership for stuff? Like, why aren't you putting in extra time? Why don't you want to work hard?
Yeah,
Like, why aren't
I
you doing?
care.
Oh man, it's like, and the reality here is that neither of them is right nor wrong. There's
Yeah.
some truth to a little bit of everything, but like back to the lie that we all swallowed, like in the associate thing, like like associateship really should be defined. The way that we've defined associateship in the industry is, don't worry about being engaged. We'll make everything work. And yet that was a lie from the get-go, right? And so guess you know what the funny part is? Nobody's happy. The owners aren't happy. They're pissed off. They're angry. They're on their seventh associate and they're frustrated because the process of cycling through associates is destroying their profitability. It's destroying their patient reputation and it's costing them team members. That one of the single greatest costs of team members is when we introduce associates. All of a sudden, everything that was so great and so easy with Dr. Smith is now heck on earth, right? And so associates not happy, dentists not happy. Here we are. Josie, what would you fill in?
I heard this statistic a long time ago, and that was that 50% of people will lie on their resume and 100% of people will exaggerate. And I think that when we're in a recruiting situation, I know I definitely did it. I was telling all the good parts about our company, and I would try to say, oh, we've got some things that we need to work on. But I really was like explaining what the vision was for our doctor experience. But the truth was, operations may not totally match that. And so I think that we have to remember that there's recruiting and selling people, and sometimes we have to put our best face forward, whether that's an associate acting more confident that they do root canals when maybe they're struggling to do root canals, or a business being able to say, hey, our culture is really great, knowing that maybe there are some challenges. But then there's this process that we really get to integrate with, and that's called onboarding. And how do we actually level set? But as an operations person, what I have noticed time and time again, whether in our company or the other companies that I've consulted with, is that this dentist to dentist relationship is really a tough one. And I haven't quite been able to like nail down exactly what it is. I watched Eric go through this and I watched him figure out, how do I actually lead other dentists? Because in many ways you feel like a peer and you don't want to be their boss. And there's this like myth that associate dentists don't need to be led or managed, when they absolutely do need to be led and managed, but there's a nuanced way to do it. And so I believe that if we like got down to really where the struggle is, it's how do we best lead doctors who are highly educated, some of them, many of them high performing. They're a different type of person than maybe some of our team members. And we do need to manage them. We can't just leave them alone, but there is a nuanced way to help get them what they need, to give them clear direction, to give them feedback, and to partner with them in their performance management.
What I hear you saying inside of that, Josie, is that like first, everybody in the industry says, go get an associate, make more money. It's going to be so easy.
Mhm.
but then nobody offers us a dedicated system or the model to be able to do it, right? And it's like just because you're a great and exceptional dentist with a really profitable or successful practice doesn't mean you're a great developer of other dentists. That's like saying it's like Michael Jordan, right? Like Michael Jordan, like we'll argue that he's the best basketball player of all time, right? Like, and nobody will say he's not do that argument. But how was he at baseball? That's a totally different game. Developing dentists is a game that nobody has a model for, and nobody has like honestly great track records with. So, and the other thing, Josie, like what is one of the biggest complaints on large DSOs is that young associate dentists or just associates in general say, I feel like they're just treating me like other employees. And well, I mean, in one sense, yeah, you are an employee, but in the other sense, they've got a $500,000 or more debt load, right? They have an expectation on their shoulders and responsibilities and burdens and malpractice and all sorts of stuff that other employees certainly don't have. So I think there's probably a reasonable case for recognizing that this ain't just another employee, that there is something special that has to happen in the nurturing and development of that relationship.
Yeah, I think I love where you're going, Eric. I want to drive in with both of you. So I want to hear more on that. Basically, we've identified we have this big problem of associates flooding the market. There are more than half of dentists that are in that situation. There are pain points between that relationship between associate and owner doc, or even just maybe even associate to associate. There probably could be some friction of comparison, I imagine. Like, I feel like this associate is getting a leg up and I'm not. And I'm sure there's all sorts of those types of things that happen. So can you guys talk through, because you have put your heads down and you're focused on solving this problem. So I want to make sure that listeners hear some of the solutions you guys are coming up with. Like, how do you guys think about that problem and how do you think about actually solving it? Like, where does it start? Does it start at recruiting? If I've already recruited an associate and I have someone in my business and there is friction, can we like turn things around? If so, how? I want you guys to start talking about some problem solving, if you would.
Well, the first thing that I'll say is that Josie and I have committed to this.
Yeah.
We've been helping develop dental groups for years. And what we recognized was that this is everybody's problem. There's literally, it's such a small percentage that are like, oh, this is going great, we're crushing it. And the truth is they're lying usually when they say that, because 6 weeks later, they're like, oh no, I just lost all my associates, right? Everything's perfect 6 weeks later. They're all gone. And we're so accustomed to it that we realized we have to invest significantly in helping to address this space, right? And so there's really two ways that you can look at this, Steve. The first is like, how do we stop the bleeding, right? Like, just like, how do we, before we can repair things, we got to stop the bleeding. And stopping the bleeding is sitting there and saying, how are we nurturing and caring for these associates and helping them to have a pathway of success? Because the truth is, they didn't come in with the skills that they needed to be top 10% dentists. They didn't come in with the knowledge about the business pieces. They didn't come in, this is the more amazing thing, they don't know how, they knew how to get through dental school, they knew how to get into dental school. They don't know how to create a strategy to be a top performing dentist. So we got to stop the bleeding there. Then on the other side of this, it's about the systems inside your practice, inside your practice or your company. In other words, do you have the systems in place to take care of a dentist and to nurture them through all the stuff? And do you have somebody to operate those systems? Because oftentimes the owner was like, I'm doing this so that I have more freedom. The last thing I want to do is to have another job, right? And so when Josie and I talk through systems, we talk about things like absolute clarity of expectations, like clinical standards, behavioral standards. Like, are we on the same page? When are we going to connect? What are we going to talk about? Are we tracking our performance in the right way? Do we have like clear data sets? Hashtag dental intel. Like, do we have data and are we using the data? It's so funny. 80% of the dentists that work with us, the associates, come in and have no idea whether or not they have a dashboard. And the majority of them do. And they don't know. They just don't even know, much less do they know how to change any of that data. It blows my mind every single time, right? And so then other things like, how are we doing? Are we doing performance reviews? Josie and I have built systems. We actually do performance reviews for the company to make it easy, like every 90 days to be able to keep things buttered up. But if you're not connecting with your doctors are going to try to find somewhere else to connect. How do we train and onboard? how do we hire more great dentists, and like who's going to do it? So that gives an overview of like of all the systems. But Josey, like what would you add in? What did we miss?
I think that as far as the leadership systems, it's being able to have these very nuanced conversations. And what's different about managing a dentist is Eric mentioned it, but I'll talk about it more directly. And that is, are they satisfied with what they're making every month? And then what are their life goals? And so inside conversations with dentists, we talk more holistically about the goals in their life and how working in our practice helps them achieve their goals in their life. Because if they can't see a future inside your company, they're going to build their future outside of your company. And so we have to constantly have that as something that we're talking about. And then there's other things, that are a little bit more accessory, like everybody's using partnership as these golden handcuffs, but almost everybody I know is doing partnership wrong. And I think that there's a better way to, one, have the associate dentist feel aligned and attached to the business, but also set clearer expectations and have a better relationship. So that's the leadership stuff. What I will also say is we do a lot of direct training with associate dentists. And we've had over 100 dentists go through this. And yes, he was right. Many of them had dental intel, but they didn't know they had dental intel. And so helping them understand their numbers and use their scorecard, we are huge proponents of metrics and measurement. But what we found is we asked all of these dentists, would you like to be more productive? And they all said yes. And we said, do you know how to be more productive? And they said, no. And so we help them with really like simple concepts, mindset, habits, tools to help them find ways to increase their productivity. And through that, they also find more joy and fulfillment in what they're doing inside the practice and outside the practice.
Yeah, I have to say this. I was out with a group of just over 100 dentists about 3 weeks ago, and was speaking, and almost all of them were associates. They all work for the same dental group. And one of the things that I was so surprised by, there's something that I look at all the time with owners that I just assume that associate dentists were looking at. And this just speaks to what you were just saying. So I pull up what's called Provider Pulse, and Provider Pulse is where in DI, a doctor can see like their case metrics is what we're looking at. Like, okay, like how often do I diagnose? And when I diagnose, how often do patients say yes? And of the total dollars I'm diagnosing, how much of those dollars, what percentage of the dollars are actually getting completed? And we kind of were going through that flow. And so I ask an associate dentist, I'm like, hey, who wants to volunteer? And we'll go and like dive into you. And it was fascinating. His name is Dr. Joseph. And we pull up his diagnostic rate. And between him and the two hygienists, his diagnostic rate was like perfect in the sense that like it was the same. Sometimes we'll see variation where it's like, the relationship might be changing that, but it was like dialed. And then when we got to the bottom one, the treatment dollar case acceptance, here's what was crazy. And it was cool to see how the other associates knew exactly what was going on. Dr. Joseph didn't even say anything. So he had presented about, I think it was like about it was probably about $300,000 of treatment in Q1 of this year. No, more than that. It was going to be closer to like 500-600. I'm doing the mental math. I'm trying to remember. So he presented a bunch of treatment with both hygienists, but there was a 6% difference in case acceptance rate. With I'll use a different name so people know who they are. We'll call her Natalie. With Natalie, it was 6% higher. And we'll call her Jane, it was 6% lower. And here's what was crazy. I asked the room and just said, well, I said, Joseph, why is it different? And before he could even answer, the other associates were like, oh, he and Natalie are homies. Like they are two peas in a pod. They are in sync. They work so well together. And the other hygienist is like not bad. It's just like she's just kind of been there forever and they've never really like synced before. And here was this aha moment for this associate though. I didn't lean into the relationship necessarily. For him, I just asked the question. I said, hey, can we just do some quick math? Pull out your phone. Go and type in the number that you presented with that lower performing hygienist.
Yes.
And I want you to change the treatment acceptance to what you did with Natalie. And he did it, and it was just shy of $30,000 in production that he would have completed in 1 quarter, right, had he just been maybe a little more aware, a little more intentional in his habits with the hygienist. So all of a sudden, he had this like aha moment where he's like, whoa, if I care about this thing, yes, which felt like business, felt like something that wasn't his job. If I care about this thing, it actually helps me. It gets me what I want, which is better outcomes for obviously production, but also for the patients. Like those are real patients that work's not getting completed on, where if he was a little more intentional about what's going on there. So how do you guys go about getting dentists excited about stuff like that? Because obviously there's those moments that you might have where they have these like light bulbs where it's like, I see now how that connects to me as an associate, and it feels less like top down. The business is making me look at these boring metrics I don't care about, or these fill out these reports that I don't necessarily like love. How do you think about connecting it back to the dentist to make sure they're actually like stoked on what processes or systems we're trying to implement?
Steve, what you just nailed, like the light bulb moments, we deliver light bulbs. That's part of our job. The cool thing about light bulbs is that when that light bulb pops on, it illuminates and it shows things that have already been there, but we just never saw it. That was your example just now. And part of our program directly for associates is we're delivering like mass quantities of light bulbs. We're turning on the light bulbs that honestly their owners don't even know this stuff. Like this isn't natural. This isn't being taught, but they are truths, right? And so we start turning on those light bulbs and start exposing those truths. But here's the hard part: like we still have to move. Like shining light doesn't change crap. We
Yeah.
still have to move from shining light on the things to turning it into engagement and a choice. And so the second piece of what we do is like, we have different levels of engagement of different doctors. Dentists have to make this choice that they're willing to choose. And so what we do is we make it easy, we make it tangible, and we make it systematic, rhythmic, because, they always say like we accomplish far less than we think we can in 90 days, but we can accomplish far more than we think we can over 10 years, right? And it's all about consistency. And so we reveal those truths, those light bulbs, so that dentists can all of a sudden see, wait a minute, I signed up to deliver tons of impact. And what you're saying is that my relationship with my hygienist is impacting my impact. My relationship, the way I speak to my patients, the way I carry myself, those days when I come into the office and I'm down and I let that down energy walk with me through the day, I just denied patients the ability to be healed. Oh, that's really big. So when you expose those truths, then we hand dentists tools to be able to overcome them, right? I'll give you an example of a great tool that we give dentists. One of those things that we talk about, Steve, is how well prepared for you were. How much are you prepared for the next day, right? Like you guys have built such an incredible tool inside of your huddle, right? But it's all for naught if we don't know how to use it and turn it into tangible action. And so we have a cool little tool that we give dentists. It's like, listen, before you go home, before you go to bed, before you check out for the day, take a few minutes with your little team to just prep for what's going to happen tomorrow, so that when we get there, there's a level of like intention, right? And what's funny is it changes the way we walk into the office. When all of a sudden, that there's 65,000 of incomplete treatment and hygiene that day, I'm like kind of skipping in a little bit. Like, I've got holes in my schedule, but I know I'm going to fill them, So that's just a tangible example of how we work with these doctors. And here's the other thing, like acknowledging owner doctor doesn't have time. They want freedom, right? This isn't their skill. And there's also oftentimes mistrust. So when you bring in Eric Roman and Josey Sewell, all of a sudden we can have this third party trust with dentists that the owner might not at first have, and then we can help rebuild that relationship together.
Love triangle.
That's
Yeah.
right. That's right. What I'll also say, oh, go ahead, Steve.
Can I ask you a question, Josie? Because as Eric was talking, I had this like light bulb moment where I shared how Joseph got to a light bulb, and then I just had this real moment when I realized like I've not gone and looked to see if anything actually changed. Like how often do these dentists have a light bulb moment and then they're like well intentioned, where I'm sure he's like, man, if I could, then I would. But the honest truth is like this associate probably doesn't even know like how to go about having, does he go have a conversation with his other hygienist and say, hey, like, I want to set a goal? Like, how does he even go about getting to change, if that makes sense? And I think that's where some of the systems and ideas that you guys implement can be really helpful. So I don't know if you want to like share a few like bars or ideas around like, okay, so Joseph just had the aha moment. How do you actually help Joseph get to change, if that makes sense? Like get to improvement?
Yeah, so I would say that we live in a 90-day world inside these programs. And so we are having people measure important numbers. We're having them set intentional goals, and we're having them pick just a few things that they want to work on. What we have been guilty of in the past is we'll stand on stage and do a 2-day workshop or a webinar or whatever. We fire hose people with a ton of information, and then they walk home and they're like, I feel inspired, but I feel overwhelmed. I don't know actually how to implement this. And so we have been ruthless in our discipline to say, here's all that we teach. What is the most basic, most practical, most important thing that if they do this one thing, they'll start to see change? And so we are really trying to base the success of our program on that behavior change. And we have an opportunity because they're reporting on numbers every day. Some of them graduate to where they're looking at it once a week, but every 90 days, we have an expectation that our doctors are looking at their quarter, looking at their numbers, making plans for the next one. So let's say that Dr. Joseph was in the program. We sat down, we had this light bulb moment. Then I would say, hey, Dr. Joseph, what this week do you think you can do? And maybe just observing what's different with Natalie versus different with Jane or whatever our name was. And is it just a level of comfort for you that if you felt more comfortable, inside her operatory, maybe you'd be more confident in yourself? Is it that maybe the handoffs with Natalie are really, really solid and she's done a good job co-diagnosing? Could we teach Jane the same thing? What is your goal by the end of this week? What is your goal by the end of 90 days? And so taking those little bitty things that they can focus on intentionally. What we also have them do is this quarterly plan that they're committing to, we have them share it with their team, their dental assistants, their hygienists. So everybody's on board what this doctor's trying to do. What we have found is that a dentist is a leader, no matter if they're an associate or an owner. The patient looks to them, the team looks to them, everybody looks to them as a leader, but often they don't realize that they are a leader. And so helping and empowering them to be that leader and make those decisions and guide what's happening in the operatory more confidently. But we have the opportunity every 90 days to come back and look and review that and see if that's something he wants to work on. Maybe he wants to work on his diagnosis and not with that, but they have that opportunity, and we're reviewing it every 90 days.
Josey, what I was just sitting in is the simplicity of, I want to change my numbers. That's goal, right? I want something to change. Goals by themselves mean nothing. And so what you just said, Josey, is that we take them from goals to strategic actions that create the goals. And that's where most people start. I just want to make more money next quarter. That's not good enough. What's the actual target? And then what are the strategic actions that are going to get you there? But again, not good enough. Then you got to do it. You can't just know the strategic actions. And so then there has to be a measure of loving accountability and support. And that's just sitting there and saying, okay, we looked at your numbers last week. You didn't make progress. Did you do this? Was it working? Do we need to make a change, right? Clearly, let's look at execution, So at the end of the day, Steve, what we've discovered that we are is we're associate and clinical director behavior change specialists. We're there to help people make the changes that they really want to make. They just don't know how to do it.
Now, I can't believe how fast time goes. We're already creeping up on the end of this thing. I asked the same question. This has been so wicked insightful. I love this conversation. It might be worth doing a part 2 and getting even more into the weeds with this. I ask every guest the same question, which is, what does growth in dentistry mean to you?
Josey, I'll let you start.
Oh, I knew he was going to do that. I was hoping he
would
go
first.
first.
I'll go first, Josey. You can.
Okay.
You can just. You know what, Steve? When we're ready for a new generation of growth inside of dentistry, that isn't based on driving more revenue or more locations. Growth in the next generation of dentistry is about making what we do sustainable, where people aren't running from the dental industry as fast as they can. Growth in the next generation of dentistry is about infusing love deeper into what we're doing every single day, showing loving respect for our patients, loving respect for our teams, and loving respect for each other. That's the second piece of it. It's about renewing our reputation in the eyes of the public. It's about serving patients where they are instead of acting like we're experts, shut up and do what we say. It's about coming in alongside them and saying, I hear you and I want to be your support and getting what you need and you desire. And last but not least, like when we do those things, when we get those systems dialed in, the outcome from it is going to be a new level of like revenue and profitability growth, but it's only because we did the right things first. So that's my story. Josie?
Yeah, it's very much the same, that it has to do with our people and it has to do with taking great care of our people. We talk about this concept of high love and high accountability. And I believe that culture, if you have a good culture, it will absolutely mean that your business is profitable. And the way that you do that is by taking amazing care of the human beings that are in the walls of that building and helping them learn and grow and develop. And that's really exciting to me. I think that our businesses are a vehicle for good in the world, but only if we take great care of our people first, and then they're going to take great care of our patients. And so finding more joy, I think, in what we do and being excited about going to work every day, I think that we can change generations when we do that. And dentistry's been doing this, like duct tape it together and flip it and sell it for a big multiple. And I don't think that we're better for that. And we're going to have to dig deep and create healthier work environments so that we are happier and healthier and our patients are happier and healthier.
Such a perfect response. I'm excited to clip that out and get it out to everyone. You guys are amazing human beings. Thank you for joining me today. Now, I'm sure people are thinking, hey, like, how do I get in touch with Eric and with Josie? Do you guys have any resources that you share with folks that like can go start looking at? Like, what's the best way to get in touch with you guys? A website they can go to, email?
Yes. So you can, right now we've got Eric's website is housing all of our company information. And so it's just ericjroman.com.
Oh, excuse me. It is
Dr. Excuse me.
Dr.
Yes. Yes.
Eric,
Excuse me.
ERICJ, and then my last name Roman.com. But we
Yes.
also have something coming up, Steve. We've got a virtual event for anybody that's overseeing associates, a single day on a Friday. And you know what we would do? We would be happy to offer your audience like free access to that. Anybody that's sitting there and saying, hey, listen, I want to know more about how I can take great care of associates in a single day, we will tell you like everything that somebody needs to know, like the 20% that gets 80% of the value in caring for associates. It's easy, it's low touch, and because it's virtual, you can do it from your living room. So
amazing.
Plus you get to hang out with us for a full day. June 6th, Friday, June 6th. It's going to start at 9:00 Mountain Time and go until 5:00 Mountain Time. Let me check my calendar to make sure that that is not 8 a.m. But it will be, yeah, I think that
I'll get a registration link and throw it in the show notes.
And yeah, it's free for your audience. We'll make that a gift to them. And this is valuable if you're thinking about having associates, if you have associates and you're not getting what you want, or if you have associates and you recognize that there's another level that you could go to really be able to make this more enjoyable. Our goal here is to like bridge the gap between associates and the people that care for them, and like defy this lie that we've all fallen victim to, and like create more love inside there, because that's what's good for everybody, and it's what we deserve, right?
Sweet.
Cool.
If you're listening, definitely go and join this workship. I think I'm going to try to join June 6th all day. Every minute I'm not in a meeting on June 6th, I will be logging in to make sure I'm listening to what you guys have to share. I always love learning from you. So thank you guys again for joining. For those listening, I'll make sure I have those links posted in the show notes. We'll also blast this to social media channels if you're seeing us there, and make sure that you got that link as well. Thank you, Josie and Eric, for joining me today. And thanks for the listeners for joining. This has been another episode of the Growth in Dentistry podcast. Keep growing, and we'll talk soon.